let's get started. So my name's Anna Harrison. I'm at eFox down in Brisbane. Has anyone heard of eFox before? Possibly not. Has anyone heard of TinyMCE before? Yeah. Great. Okay. So TinyMCE is an open source text editor, and we have millions and gazillions of users worldwide. And it's likely to be a product that you've used, even though you don't know you've used it, like on LinkedIn, or anytime you type in a browser and you get bold, italic, underline, those kinds of buttons, that's probably our product, 50% chance. So today I'm here to talk about decisions considered harmful, and I was preparing this presentation, and then I couldn't decide on which font to use, and I ran it by the guys in the office, and they were like not very helpful. So I've given you all of them, which isn't entirely true, because on my computer on a given day I have 400 fonts installed, right? All beautifully in alphabetical order, and you've seen this in every editing piece of software that you've ever used. And that's fantastic, right? But of course it's the tip of the iceberg, because really there are thousands and thousands and thousands of fonts, and at any given day we could have them all in our product arranged in perfect alphabetical order ready for us to use. And that makes sense, right? If you're developing a product and you have a whole bunch of options, you'd want to give them to me in alphabetical order, right? Because that's the way I would like to choose fonts. It doesn't take me 7 hours to pick the ideal font starting with A and ending on wingdings. No, it does not. What I really would like to see is this. I'm putting together a presentation for ForwardJS, and why does no writing package give me fonts in a limited kind of range, arranged by technology hipster pack, so I can wow you all with the 3 fonts that I have used? But this doesn't happen, does it? We have the freedom to choose 35,000 fonts, but it doesn't make our life necessarily easier. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about how reducing choice and making design decisions can actually help us to develop products which are kinder to our users, and ergo, people will love our products more. So, getting started, reducing choice. I've put up a photo of me in case you stalk me on LinkedIn or something, and I don't look exactly like I do today because I've just got off a plane from Australia. So this is what I look like out there, the casually glamorous photo. And my background is I started out in computer science many, many years ago, before mobile phones and so on. And since then, I've worked in various startups around the world doing different aspects of product design. So I don't code anymore these days. My knowledge of coding today is limited to be just enough to annoy the engineers, but no real hands-on stuff. And my day, because, this is still the segment about me, my day starts out like this. I wake up at 4:44 every day. It's very symmetrical, and I love that number. And I open my eyes and I go, do I get out of bed or do I press snooze? Most of the time it's snooze, and the alarm goes off 9 minutes later, and I have to make that decision again. Do I get up now or do I press snooze? And so on. I check my email and so on. By the time 7:37 rolls around, I've made all kinds of decisions already. And in fact, Google tells me that by the time I go to bed that night, I've actually made 35,000 decisions in a regular day, right? That's a lot of decisions. And as app developers, when we develop product, we think of giving our user choices, and we think, oh, it's only 3 or 4 choices. They will love the flexibility. They will love the freedom that they have to customize things and make them their own. But actually, these choices, although it's 3 or 4, there we go. It's actually, the choices are made in the context of 35,000 decisions that we're making in the day-to-day of our everyday lives anyway. So, what seems like a small thing and like a gift that we are giving the user is actually very much different when considered in the context of the daily life of a regular person. And by now, your head is hopefully screaming and saying, hang on a minute, just wait a minute. But we have been taught to know that choice is good, and choice is freedom, and freedom of choice is a cliche, right? So what are you talking about? Taking away choice and freedom is like taking away a basic human right. And that, in fact, is one of the most perpetuated dogmas of Western industrialized nations, and that is that in order to maximize collective well-being, the way to do that is to offer more choice, right? So let's look at that a little bit more. You know, we see that dogma perpetuated in every product that we use, and none better than our editing software, right? Microsoft Word gives us a gazillion buttons. Some of their buttons have buttons, right? And we should be really, really happy about using a product like this. And even our product, I'm not picking on Microsoft Word, our product, TinyMCE, we have so many buttons. We even give you an API so you can add more buttons, right? Because just in case you didn't have enough. And then you can add like more drawers so you can fit all those buttons in. And along comes Medium, and Medium says, we're going to take it all away and make it simpler, right? And you know what? I've never heard anyone applaud Medium for this. What I have heard much more often is people saying, hang on, but they have a limited use case. They can do that only because they're trapping the user, you know, onto their platform. And so they've taken away choice, but it's actually a bad, bad thing, right? And honestly, let's reflect on that. When was the last time that you needed 182 different formatting options and fonts when you were writing? Most of the time, it just takes up time and costs you time in making the decision of which font to use, all the way from A to Z, right? And I couldn't decide on the font, so I ran it by the guys in the office, and they said, you've got to put in Comic Sans. So here it is. So, you know, which one is better, this one or this one? I'm not really sure, but that's okay, because we have products. We have products which could do some A/B testing for us and help us with our decisions. And as I was looking for a product like this, I discovered, you know what? Why A and B testing? Why not give us an option of C testing as well? And I'm sure that will be on the market pretty soon, right? And this is the way that we develop product. We start out with even a limited feature set, maybe in the beginning, but anyone who's had a product around for more than 2 years has added features, right? Who here has reduced features in a product? No one. We think more and more and more, and this is the way that our minds think, and this is the way that engineering minds think. You know, let's give the user more options. Let's give them a little bit more. And so we fly through the universe on our rock, waving the freedom of choice flag, absolutely delighting in the fact that we have not one, but 50 shades of gray to choose from in life. I mean, this is choice. This is good. 178 flavors of mayonnaise, because you want your sandwich to be just right, okay? And at any point in time, 2 billion people we could potentially date right inside our phone world. And that's not even enough. We have more choice than that. When we're actually on a date with one of these people, we can be looking for more dates, right while we're there, right? So choice is all around us. And is it making us happier? No, in Western nations, depression is an epidemic, right? So we've got this weird situation where we're told that our freedom of choice is our right. It's going to maximize the welfare of the people. And yet depression, anxiety, et cetera, these are all on the rise. People are not happier with all this choice. And, it's so annoying. So I'll share with you a slide. This January, I took my kids to Sri Lanka. Has anyone been to Sri Lanka before? It's okay. Put it on your list of places to go. It's amazing. And we're driving around Sri Lanka, you know, touring around, and we see a lot of stores like this one. And this store here, it sells buffalo curd, you know, and it sells one type of buffalo curd in one size of container, and it doesn't come in 7 different flavors. It's buffalo curd in one kind of container, and that's sold in the south of Sri Lanka. And if you want a pineapple, well, you need to drive north, because pineapples are sold in the north. And you would think with such limitations on life, people would be like desperately unhappy, but you know, I didn't see any evidence of that. I saw a country that had far less on a material scale than we do, and people looked quite content and quite happy, right? And you can only buy a pineapple in the north, not in the south of Sri Lanka. And in fact, here's a little anecdote. So this was sort of playing on my mind, and I'm observing all of this, and so I turned to our driver, who had flawless English, so understanding was not a barrier, and I said to him, Gamanu, what is your favorite kind of food, you know? And he looked at me, and he's puzzled. He's like, you're crazy, lady. He's like, you know what? My favorite kind of food is whatever food I'm eating in that moment. And I was like, wow, his mind can't even really process the notion that you would have a favorite of something, right? And so if choice is not freedom, and if it's anxiety, and it gives us decision fatigue and cognitive overload and all of that, you know, why is all of that? Why is the puzzle? At the crux of the puzzle is the fact that what leads to unhappiness is that when we have all that choice and we make the decision ourselves, the buck stops there, right? So you've got no one to blame except yourself. And that is what leads to massive unhappiness and so on. But you can read about that in a psychology book. And at this point, you are probably thinking, okay, my mind is hurting. What does this have to do with coding? Can we get less fluffy? And it does actually lead into something that translates into product design. And that is this. I am not advocating removing choices altogether, right? So all around us, we see products that give us choice. Even the 4 ingredients book, which has drastically reduced ingredients, gives us 340 recipes, not one, so we have choice there. Products that have been simplified to a simple left and right action still give us, access to lots and lots of people. So it's not about removing choice that we can make, not at all. It's not about removing choice. It's about removing the choices that have to be made at any point in time by our users. So I'm certainly not advocating don't give a person choice, but reduce the choices that have to be made in your product at any point in time. And the reasons why, how can we do this? How can we remove all these choices? Well, part of that is in the way that we design our products. So now, I did some surveying. I'm a really big proponent of user testing, so I tested some developers. And this was a fairly, generic kind of statement that I could generalize to all JavaScript developers, except it really isn't, right? No JavaScript developer ever has said, hey, design team, I love you guys so much because you've limited all my options. In fact, the place I work at now, it's been a year of a reasonably antagonistic kind of relationship where the developers are like, we want freedom of choice. We want to make everything configurable for our users. We don't want to put them in a place where we've made choices for them. And along comes design and says exactly the opposite. Limit choice, make things far less options. Let's give them things that work right out of the box. And, a way that, depending on the size of company you're in, who's heard of design systems before, right? So design systems are effectively ways of structuring the reduction of choice in the way that we develop products and so on. And companies like Westpac, which is a bank in Australia, they've got a very, very elaborate design system. It's amazing, right down to descriptions of the roles that people take on a project and so on. It's outstanding. It's at gel.westpacgroup.com.au if you are interested in that. Material design, you've all seen that. That's another way that design helps to bring a little bit of a systematic approach to product design and so on. Even atomic design, right down to that. So design systems are not there to limit your freedom as a developer necessarily. They're there to help to bring consistency to the product. They're actually there to help you reduce the number of decisions that you need to make when you're coding. And so, embrace these. Don't necessarily have an antagonistic relationship with the design team because they're reducing your choices as a developer. It leads to better products. And one of the first things I did at eFox was we have 2 text editors. We have TinyMCE, which is the open source one that some people have heard of, and we have another one called TextBox. And now TextBox it's a commercial product. We sell it mainly to IBM. And when I came along and we looked at this product, we found that we had 606 selectors in the CSS. There were thousands of lines of code. And we had 133 hard-coded variables in the product, right? Now, it was a mess. It's been developed over only 3 years, and it's already a mess. And so effectively, we did a stock take, and I'll show you how we did that, and we turned the 133 hard-coded variables into 10. Hard-coded references to color into 10 color variables. Now, as a developer, right, that makes your life easier. It's not an infringement of your freedom. It actually does make life easier and the software more maintainable. And for us, the way we did this was we did a visual stock take of the product. So we said, hey, what are all the elements that we can see when we use the product? Forget about what's in the code. Forget about what's in the CSS. What are all the elements that we have? And we color picked everything, right? So we did a grid. We we did a grid and we found that we had quite a lot of unique colors. And again, when you put them in a spectrum and you look at it like this, you go, we don't need this many colors. The human eye can't distinguish between CF, CF, and D8, D8. You can't tell the difference, so let's collapse those. And through collapsing the colors in that way, we ended up with just 10 variables like this. And so, it was a really good process. So this is an example of a design system. It's not one that is like material design. It's not one that is huge and is a product in and of itself. But it's an approach where we were able to change the structure of our product, and using design make it more easy for developers and for people as well. And the changes percolated through to our users because we were able to give them just 5 color variables that they could set to theme the product. So, we've gone from setting 133 hard-coded references to having a color picker or a styler for our product with only 5 colors. So that's an improvement for everyone. So embrace design systems. Design does save time by reducing development effort, because it helps you to reduce the decisions that you have to make when you're coding. So on to being kind to your user. So in this segment, we've looked at, fundamentally choice. We believe that choices are a really good thing and they increase our well-being as people. And I'm making a strong case to suggest that that isn't in fact the case, that choice makes us, we live in a world where we have to make too many decisions every day. So reduce the choice. You can do this through different design techniques by reconsidering how you structure your product and how you approach design. And certainly for me, I think that a better outcome is definitely achieved when development and design work hand in hand rather than in competition with each other, right? And in this last bit, we're going to look at how this actually translates into being kinder to your user and therefore your products being of higher quality and better. So be kind to your user. The very first thing is make it work straight out of the box, right? And here I'm going to be critical of our own product in a way. TinyMCE, it's used by millions of people. It's a very flexible product. And when you take it out of the box, pretty much nothing works. You have to configure everything, right? And this is a fundamental culture clash that we have internally at the organization, right? Because the developers whose heart and soul have gone into spearheading that open source project really, really believe that giving the user freedom is fundamental, right? But we end up with a product where it's very, very hard to make it use straight out of the box. It takes a couple of days to set it all up and configure all the different options, and it is very flexible. You can make it do anything. You can make it sing and dance, but it's going to take you 2 days to do that. And so again, it's not about reducing how many options someone can have in this product, but it's saying, why don't we make it sensible and make it work out of the box and provide defaults with this product so that you don't have to customize as much? Or, you can just work on the deltas of customization rather than from a blank slate every single time. And you can see it in products. There are lots of complex products. Elasticsearch has Kibana, which is the web UI. It's a complicated product, but when you take that Kibana out of the box, it works, and you can go on and adjust all different kinds of settings, but fundamentally, you can make it work in a few minutes. So, and again, compare this to our product, TinyMCE, which is just the skin selector in TinyMCE has hundreds of variables, and you need to go through a process of, setting button border left and button split border and button primary text, and it does your head in, right? All of that, and compare that to the other text editor where we got all those choices down to 5, and there is no discernible difference in the product when you use it, right? So this gives you a lot of freedom, but it makes life much, much harder, and it doesn't really have any visible effect or detriment to the user at the end of the day. So provide sensitive defaults. And the reason why it's a good idea to provide sensitive defaults and make things work right out of the box is that sensible defaults will reduce cognitive load for people, right? So again, think about your app that you're developing. Think of it in the context of 35,000 decisions that someone is making every day, even though you're adding 3 or 4, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, right? So reducing cognitive load is a really important thing, and it should be a priority when you're coding as well. So, before I came along to eFox has been around for about 18 years, and before I came along, the general approach of the product development team was, oh, excellent, let's build that feature, and then we'll make it configurable. And, Jack, who runs product, one of our product teams, he's like, we'll just config the shit out of it, right? And so that's great. And then, who identifies with that kind of approach? I can see a lot of people nodding, right? So this is quite common in product development and in engineering teams. We'll build the feature, we'll make it configurable, right? And so does that slide hurt your eyes a little bit? I had every intention of changing the color, right? But I thought, no, I'm just going to give you a color picker so you can change it yourselves, right? And this is how we develop product. We go, let's make it configurable. Let's make the user decide. But really, give me a color that doesn't hurt my eyes, because that would be much kinder to me as a user using your products. So configuration options, in a nutshell, they really shift the burden of design onto your user. Making everything configurable. On the one hand, we truly believe that making everything configurable is like a freedom. It's that flag of freedom of choice, and we're doing a good thing for the people. But actually, we're kind of copping out. We're saying, user, you configure the product, you bear the burden of design, right? And can someone take a picture of this slide and tweet it? Because this is Andrew, the CEO of our company, and I promised him I'd put his quote in. I actually love it. I think it's awesome. So, Andrew's like, configuration options are the place where arguments go to die, right? And that is so true. Anytime we have an argument in the product team and we can't decide on what to do with something, we'll just make it configurable, right? So if nothing else, take away from the talk this morning that configuration options are really the place where arguments go to die. It's a cop-out. Don't use that as a way to not make a good decision and give your product something tangible that makes it easier to use, right? So rethink the design, and remember that your app is being used in the context of someone's life. And, they have dogs and cats and things going on in their lives. And it's, the technology needs to fit into that. And making things a little bit more simple is really kind to the person who's using your product at the end of the day. So some examples here of how we did this and how we use design to simplify things. So our product, fundamentally, this is TextBox. It's a text editor. It was desktop-based, and 3 years ago we made a decision to make it mobile. And so we first basically took the product and put it on a mobile phone, right? And when you... Actually, I'm talking about the wrong example. Oh, that one comes next. I got myself confused. Okay, this is still TextBox, still the same product, but the mobile example is next. What I'm going to talk about first is actually related to the panel discussion this morning and intelligent agents and so on. And we did a bit of integration work with IBM Watson. And, IBM Watson stuff, the algorithms and so on that they have are genius. They are a lifetime career scientists that have worked on psycholinguistic analysis, and it's really amazing what they can do. And so they provide that as APIs. And what we've done is in the R&D team, we experiment with different things. And so we've hooked into the Watson APIs, and we send them across document content, and they come back with this. And this is the first version of our product, which was developed by, as a sort of proof of concept by the engineering team. And what the engineers did was they took everything that Watson gave us, and they put it in a little graph, right? And so we have all kinds of information. We know that the emotion tone of anger is at about 64%. We know that disgust is 65%. Sadness is about 7%. And, we're looking at this, and I'm looking at this. I'm still fairly new in the company, and I think to myself, what does that mean, right? I've written a document. What does it really mean that my document is 7% sad? Is that good? is that bad? What can I do with this? And I thought, I'm new. Let's put this out to some user testing. And we did. And they came back with, and they said, what does it mean that my document is 7% sad? Like, is that a cause for celebration? Am I done editing? Do I need to go back and rewrite? And, we took this back to the engineers and said, okay, why don't we rethink the design of this element, right? Because people are not getting it. And proposed this one here, which is taking all of that information and condensing it into a single timeline. So we've taken away the different categories because, as a person who doesn't have psycholinguistic training, I don't know what the difference between emotional tone and social tone is. And we put it on one timeline. Instead of giving percentages for things, we just made things on and off, right? And slightly changed the scale. So there was a little bit of research and work behind how we came up with those words. And there's some papers on that. But we came up with this. And, the hardest part of the project wasn't the research that went into building this rainbow line and deciding to condense all the things. The design exercise was hard, but it was nowhere near as hard as convincing the engineering teams to drop some information from what we reported to the users, right? It was honestly a war inside our company. The engineers were like, we are not telling the people the right thing, It's not arrogant. How do I know if it's 47% or 49% arrogant? It's important that people know. And you know what, let me tell you, the user tests didn't show that. The user tests came back with, hey, that's so cool, I can now get help in writing my assignment. Because, if I want to sound intelligent, excellent, right? And there was even one user that came back, oh my God, this is great. When I write emails to a girl, I can now make myself sound more intelligent and trustworthy and spontaneous. I love your product, right? And so here in this case, by taking away a lot of that detail and just rethinking how we present things in a way that fit into someone's life made a really big difference. It was the difference between, we've got really intelligent algorithms and technology, but they're completely unusable to someone in their raw form. So now I'll show you the mobile example, right? The mobile example. Here, we have buttons and text box like TinyMC is extensible. You can add more buttons, and when your buttons don't fit, a more drawer appears and shows all the buttons to you. So it's fantastic. We took this to the mobile screen, and we went, now you can't see anything on your screen at all because it's all buttons, right? So this isn't going to work. So we had to rethink that, and we did. We came up with a toolbar that scrolls, right? But even with a toolbar that scrolls, when you have that many buttons, you're scrolling for infinity and you can't even find what you're looking for. And again, this was a really hard exercise in saying, you know what, not every feature of a document editor belongs on a mobile phone. Tables, okay, but who's going to be setting tables to 11.75% width for a column? Can we get away with that? And so we pared things back. We pared things back a lot. Dialogues is another example. Text editors are so dialogue intensive, but on a mobile, does that form or does that element really make sense? It doesn't really, So we said no to dialogues, and we experimented with different elements and different controls for putting in things. And the middle one shows you, we took dialogues and we made them serialized so that you flip through different fields and they're ordered and you get defaults so you don't have to go all the way to the end in setting things. And just different controls so that, yes, we were reducing the choices and the options that people could set with our mobile product, but at the same time making it far more usable for that context. And we're not stopping there. We're actually still in the process of taking that and paring it right back. And some of these changes will be rolled into TinyMC as well, so keep an eye out for that. But, my dream is to pare it right back to like 5 or 6 buttons. But again, the challenge in this isn't the design work. The challenge in this is getting the engineering team to be like, yeah, okay, we're not going to let people do what they were able to do yesterday, right? No doubt everything will be configurable and you'll still be able to add 700 buttons on. But, the main takeaway of of this talk is really remember that options are great, but they gift your users with homework that they didn't ask for, you know. And so, yes, we are very, very lucky. We live in a society with lots of choices, with 178 flavors of mayonnaise, you know, that ought to be celebrated every day, and I do. But you know, when we build our products, let's work hand in hand with design. Let's reduce the choices that we bring to the user. It doesn't mean eliminating them, but set sensible defaults and make things work right out of the box. And don't be scared of not giving everything to everyone. And with that, that brings me to the end of what I wanted to cover today. And I'm very happy to take questions and so on. Reduce choices, work with your design team, and what's the last thing? Be kind to your user. Yeah, I know. That's subtle. So thank you, and questions?